Six times the charm. Hopefully the dogs will stay quiet and calm. I was listening to Bunny Boots stream with Mikey Bluehair and Ida Foxy Queen. And Mikey Bluehair and Ida Foxy Queen are anarchists. And as anarchists, they say stupid things, because that's what anarchists do. They were talking a lot about rights and about their nap and things like that. And rights don't make sense in anarchist terms. There are three kinds of rights. There are legal rights. Anarchists reject legal rights because they reject the state. There are moral rights, which don't make sense, and I'll get into those. And there are natural rights, which also don't make sense, at least as far as anarchists are concerned, and I'll get into those. First, moral rights. Anarchists like to claim that they have the right to do this and the right to do that. It's the right thing to do. But that doesn't make sense, because morality is subjective. Oh, well, you say. Certainly we can agree on some things being immoral. And yes, as societies, we can agree on some things being immoral, but that doesn't mean that each society will find the same things immoral. And you can say, well, certainly killing children is immoral. Well, as history would have it, many nations, many states, many religions have sacrificed children, and they found it to be a moral thing. The Aztecs, the Mayans, the Incans, there were child sacrificing groups all throughout the world. The Bible mentions children being sacrificed to Baal. Children being killed, while certainly it seems to be a bad thing, I will say it's a bad thing. My morality says it's bad, but not all moralities, not all societies have found it to be immoral. What about child sex? Well, if you look even today, in the Middle East, young girls as young as 8 are being married off to adult men. And yes, those marriages are consummated. The religion that holds sway in the area, according to some of their verses, I forget what they call those. It's not the Quran, it's the other thing. The Hadiths, I think. Aisha was as young as 8 or 9, I believe. 8 or 9. When she was married off to the Prophet Muhammad. Baba, if you will. And so they find it to be moral. And you can tell they find it to be moral because you look and the bride and groom will be smiling in their pictures, or at least the groom will. I'm sure the bride is somewhat apprehensive over what the night will bring. The families are there celebrating. If they believed it was immoral, they would not be doing that. They would be ashamed of it. They would be hiding it. They would not be celebrating it. Cannibalism, you say. Well, there have been societies that have celebrated cannibalism. Was it the New Guineans believed that if you eat your opponent, the person that you killed in combat, you will gain his strength? I don't believe that there is any single thing that we currently find to be immoral that was not or is not currently found to be moral. So, morality changes. Now you can say, well, we as a society can agree on what morality is. Well, if you are enforcing what society agrees on, as moral, that's just democracy. Democracy is where everybody gets together and figures out what's right and wrong, and then that's what they enforce. And if you're trying to just enforce your morality, well, if you're capable of doing it, you've just become a despot, a king, a warlord, what have you. So morality doesn't provide a good basis for anarchist rights. So the next thing that we have is natural rights. Natural rights come from God as relayed to humanity through his prophet or prophets, depending on which religion you choose to subscribe to. If religion is giving you your rights, if it is being enforced by that religion, say for example in the Middle East where Sharia courts will enforce Sharia law, then you are in a theocracy, which is a state, which anarchists don't like. So it can't be that these rights come from a theocracy. They must come from God, his, her, or itself. Well, God has, as of yet, not made an appearance to enforce any rights. Which is why today, every religion that has prohibitions against certain acts will have people violating those prohibitions. Oh, it's wrong to have premarital sex? Well, there are a lot of people having premarital sex and God isn't stopping them. Oh, it's wrong to drink? There are a lot of people drinking and God isn't stopping them. And if you want to make the claim, well, God will judge in the afterlife, well, that won't stop anybody here on earth from doing what they were going to do. You can't enforce your right here on earth. Some later judgment after people die isn't going to stop people from doing things in the here and now. Religion just by itself has never stopped anybody that I'm aware of. There have been murderers of all religions. There have been rapists of all religions. And if someone doesn't subscribe to that religion or to any religion, then obviously they wouldn't care about whatever prohibitions that religion has made. So natural laws don't work either. So we're left with legal rights. Those are the only rights left. Now, those obviously don't work for anarchists, even though they're the only rights that are actually enforced in the here and now. I did have a conversation in the comments of that video as it was streaming with people who pointed me at the Declaration of Independence. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, that among those are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And there are two quick points I would like to make on that. First of all, while I think Jefferson was a genius, that doesn't make him right. But in this case, he is right. They just failed to read the next sentence. That to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. In other words, those rights that are endowed by the Creator, blah, 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 are secured by the government. The government gives you those rights. And that is the way it is. The government gives you the rights because the government has all the rights. The state has control, complete control over the territory, over the nation, over the land. The government then gives people rights that either the government will protect or the government will give the people the means to protect. Now, that doesn't mean that the people can't rebel and strip the government of all the rights and all the power. But until they do, the government has the power. Any right that you want to enforce, the government has to be willing and able to enforce. If someone steals from you, the government is who takes them and puts them in jail. If you wish to recover from those people and you want to sue them, it is the government who gives you the court and access to the court. It is the government who gives you the order, the judicial order that allows you to recover from that thief. Without the government, you have nothing as in terms of rights. They also talked in the stream about borders and about how ridiculous borders are and how they don't exist, which I find ironic considering that they suspected that moral and or natural rights existed. Their argument was essentially that they can't see it, that they can't taste it, touch it, smell it, whatever. It's a line drawn on a map. It's not real. Well, the difference between a border and your moral rights is that there are armed men with guns who are willing to enforce the border. The states, meaning the federal government, the nations, have agreed on what those borders are. Mexico is protecting Mexico's side of the border. If you doubt me, try to sneak into Mexico. You will have to sneak in. You can't just waltz in. Unless you have like a visa and all that fun stuff or yeah. Same thing with Canada. Canada controls Canada's side of the border. The U.S. controls the U.S. side of the border. All three states do so with armed men and guns. Finally, the armed men and the guns leads me to my last point. The anarchists like to say that they have not agreed to any contract, any social contract. They haven't agreed to the terms of the laws. They weren't there when the nation was formed. They haven't agreed to anything. They shouldn't be bound by the agreements of other men who are dead, which is ridiculous. Again, the nation holds all of the power. Armed men with guns say that you have to do what the nation has agreed are the laws. If you don't agree with it, you need to get enough armed men with guns to rise up against the government and overthrow it. Because the government has the power. All power is derived from force. Period. It is. Your legal rights don't mean anything unless you can enforce them. That involves the use of force. Laws are basically just things the government says don't do this or we will use force. Borders are things the government says you can't cross or we will use force. So, the government, the nation, holds all the rights. The government grants people rights. The government then enforces those rights. The government determines what the rights are, the extent to which they can be enforced, and how they'll be enforced. Ultimately, though, my point in this is that anarchists say stupid things, and they haven't thoroughly thought through their position. Have a great day.